Burnley. Was it a wasted opportunity or a gritty draw? Either way, we didn't break their miserable streak, so that's progress. Odobert looked lively, Tell was mucked about again, Gallagher has already been written off, and he's barely unpacked his toothbrush. Romero and Van de Ven scored again, but we're still conceding stupid goals. Have our most effective goal scorers become a defensive liability? Transfers? All gone quiet, hasn't it? Robertson's not coming, Somerville isn't happening, hopefully, and the ITKs are coming up empty. Is there going to be a late surprise Deadwood loan? Probably. City next. Now, do you really hate Arsenal that much that you'd want us to lose? We may have no choice. Isn't that a bit ridiculous? It's nice one, Cyril.
Nice one, Cyril.
So welcome to Nice One, Cyril. I'm Simon Lipson. With me today we have, as ever, Kev Acott, Julie Welch, and stepping in this week, Dave Bradshaw. Welcome one and all. So why don't we get cracking? That Burnley match. Julie, what did you make of it?
I actually saw the whole match. I mean, I didn't go to Turf Moor. For a very long journalistic career, I went to Turf Moor quite a lot. It's not Bondi Beach. I'm not insane. I didn't go there. Fortunately, Sky TV played the whole game shortly after the whole lot finished. And I don't want to be sort of Panglossian about this, but actually, we weren't so bad. We weren't awful. I mean, there were nice things to see. There was a bit of crap to see, obviously, as well. Porro, who gets an awful lot of stick at the moment, now that we don't have Brennan Johnson, he's the new hate object. He was all right. The poor man is probably absolutely wiped out because I don't think he's missed a game all season, just waiting for him to break down like everybody else, but fingers crossed. Odobert, looks really good. Gallagher wasn't as bad as everybody was saying. He did a few useful things. 2 nice goals. The central defence, I mean, our defence is not got much concentration, has it? It's all, look over there, what's happening? So they all go over there and then, something happens in the other direction. Now, why that hasn't been addressed in coaching, I have no idea. But as I say, it wasn't so bad.
You won't get many Spurs podcasts where a contributor says Panglossian. So for that alone, well done, Julie. And I think we might give that the show title, Panglossian Spurs. And then no one will download it. All right, Kev, Julie mentioned the rather feeble performance of our defence. And we have to kind of investigate the problem here. Is it, Romero went and did his heroics towards the end, and there was a beautiful finish by Van de Ven early on, but we also let in 2 horrible goals. The first one, there was a balls up by initially Flappy and then Romero, who let a ball run under his foot. Then we gave them the freedom of the borough for the cross, and then the second goal was just an absolute fucking farce. We didn't play that badly, but this is Burnley we're talking about, and it's still not good enough.
It wasn't good enough. I'm still slightly bowled over by Julie's use of Panglossian, I'd like to say, and I'm sitting here trying to think of a better word. So that's what I'm gonna try and do. During the next hour, I'm going to try and come up with a better word than Panglossian. It was all right in places, that game. I mean, I think defensively it was horrible, and I don't get it. I don't get why such talented players can make so many mistakes. And that actually doesn't just apply to the defence, it applies across the board. Every single player makes far too many mistakes. And is that coaching? Is that confidence? Is it? I don't know what it is, but it's depressing. If this wasn't in the middle of one of the worst runs of form we've ever had, that probably would have been a decent enough match, and we just move on from it. Got a draw, great. That header from Romero, I have to say, was just wonderful.
Yeah.
I just loved watching that. One of those moments which just sort of where you want to watch things again and again and again. Given that we're in this weird purgatorial, is purgatorial better than Panglossian?
No, Panglossian's got it
No,
still.
okay. We're in this sort of purgatorial phase of no one knows what's happening. And that applies obviously to the manager and to the players as well. So we're in the midst of this weird period. Who knows what's going to happen before the end of the transfer window? Maybe something good's going to happen. I don't know. So it was all right in places.
I want to say antediluvian. Would that be better than Panglossian? I'm not sure. I've got no. I can't use it anywhere, but I just want to say it. Now, Dave, we had 18 shots. We don't do stats on this show, but when we do, they're good ones. 18 shots, 11 on target. Dubravka had a worldie. He made 9 saves. XG 2.3. I don't know what that means. It's meaningless. It's a bit like, you go to the all-you-can-eat buffet and you still come home feeling hungry, right? Because we weren't satisfied. We had all of this potential for scoring, and yet 11 on target. I mean, Christ, there was a time when we didn't have any on target, and yet here we are. A 2-2 draw against Burnley. We've lost to West Ham. We've lost twice to Bournemouth. We were shit against Brentford. As Kev says, the run continues, and even with, I guess, a carryover performance to a certain extent from Dortmund, it's still not happening, is it?
It's not, but I think Kev and Julie have already sort of expressed there is this kind of weird, there's such a negativity around the team at the moment that I think actually a struggling team, backs to the wall, Turf Moor was bouncing. It wasn't that bad. There was bits of it that were a bit frustrating, bits of the game where I thought we were pretty predictable a lot of the time. But yeah, and it's strange for this pod, of all pods, to be resorting to XG to console ourselves. But we did create quite a lot of chances, even from open play. And there are some positive signs. I thought Dom Solanke looked really quite sharp again. He's clearly maybe not quite full fitness for the whole 90 and all that stuff, but he's not far away. That's making a big difference, I think. So I haven't got big fancy words for it, but I'm going with a bit of sort of slight spring in my step or something like that, going into the Man City game. So that's going to come and haunt me, and I'll probably never be on the pod again.
Julie, antediluvian Julie, that's not fair, is it? That's not on. As both Kev and Dave have said, there were some positive signs, but I wonder if it's more a confidence thing now. Less than, we want to blame our manager for everything, right? Everything shit that happens. We don't want to give him any credit for anything good that happens, because that's where we are right now. And I think the relationship between manager and fans has kind of gone down the toilet. It's not enough. And I wonder whether our problem is our centre-backs. We were crying out for these two to be played together. Ange rarely had that luxury, but we're still conceding stupid goals. They're playing every week, more or less.
There are only 2 really world-class players, and I think they regard their job as to rescue us. It's not often I quote Alan Shearer, but as he said on Match of the Day, we aren't a very good team. We aren't a good team. Our players, on the whole, are subpar. When you look at all the ones who've come in and the ones who aren't subpar are the ones who are injured. The rest of the players just aren't quite good enough. And I think that over 2 or 3 seasons, we've just gradually been found out. I was thinking this morning, I do sometimes think in the mornings, actually, do we miss Son? I mean, his legs had gone. He wasn't the player he was his last season, but there was something about him. He managed to sort of hold things up enough for us not to be totally bad.
Yeah, it does a kind of a cumulative issue here that recruitment's been poor, and we've invested in lots of young players, some of whom, will become very good players, some of whom will end up being loaned out to Derby County. But right now, we're lacking some of our better players who we might reasonably expect to rely on, and we're floundering. But I still feel that if we can turn in that kind of performance against Dortmund, and if we can, get 18 shots, 11 on target against, albeit Burnley, there's enough there for us not to be floundering around in the bottom 5 or 6 of the Premier League.
I think there's enough there to get us sort of 8th or 9th place, I think, in that team. And I feel fairly sure that's what we're going to do, unless we do something dramatic in the window over the next week. There's definitely more there than we're seeing, or than we have been seeing. I was just thinking about Simmons. He did some really good things, but his final pass and his shooting were awful, just awful. And I don't know. I suspect that's not been the case in his career up to now. I think there's something about confidence. I think there's, he needs a goal. He needs a spectacular goal, I think, and then hopefully he can sort of move on a bit and become more important to us. I'm sort of, even as I say this, I'm not totally convincing myself, but I think he has something special, and I think we have a chance that he could start showing us that. It's the same with Odobert, actually. He did some really good stuff against Burnley. Yeah, it's frustrating. The problem feels psychological. I know that's not a very, dramatic thing to say, but it feels like the problem isn't necessarily with the inherent talent or not of the players. It's more about the players don't have faith in themselves or each other, or Frank particularly at the moment. And so the good bits we're seeing are the bits of them that, have meant they've become Premiership footballers. We're seeing bits of that, but not enough. Maybe
Well,
30, 40%.
I agree with that. And I think, Dave, we go from week to week thinking, people like Simmons, he's great, and then next week he's shit. And we have the same problem with Tell. We had the same problem with Odobert, who is very good against Burnley, but we've seen him disappear. And I wonder whether it's partly to do with confidence, maybe how well they start a match. If they start well enough, they maybe, really grow into it. If they hit a couple of dodgy passes or don't get involved, then they lose confidence. But isn't this kind of indicative of a team that, with lots of young players, they haven't bedded in, they haven't got anywhere near their potential, and our entire future now is, predicated on getting these people to play and do so consistently. Otherwise, we don't want to use the R word, but surely we do risk being dragged into that mire.
Just going back to what I'm probably more on kind of Kev's side of the argument, if that's appropriate compared to Julie's. I do think there is the talent there among the players, and I do think this kind of like the mentality, the negativity is kind of getting to them all, and so on and so forth. It's been a very frustrating watch, and we do look predictable. I think that's the thing that I feel that Frank hasn't really addressed. When you see other teams, you see that little bit spark of invention. They have drills, and they're kind of they're working through that seem to kind of work well. We're really bad at again, I hate the word progressing the ball or whatever. We're really bad at it, and actually, we're really good at progressing the ball backwards, which we did prior to our goal, where we went right from the edge of their box all the way back to the edge of ours, and then Flappy and then Romero, and then they scored. And it's a tough old watch, isn't it?
When Dave was talking about, progressing the ball, I was just thinking Palhinha is a big myth, because he is the one. I think he's in old-fashioned terms he would be called the regista, the deep-lying playmaker almost. I mean, he's the one who is the bridge between defence and attack. And once he's not there, well, this is what we've got. It's just a sort of mass of hopeful kind of passes sideways to the back and stuff like that. Now, I don't know how quickly Palhinha's going to be with us again. Could be next November, something like that. Who knows? I haven't seen any bulletins about his recovery. I think Kulusevski is due to be back at the end of February or beginning of March.
Is he on the grass?
I don't know, but I was given the Kulusevski's return date to action as the end of February, beginning of March. Whether that means he just sort of turns up at the training ground and does sort of little social media bits, and Richarlison comes out to shake his hand and all that shit. I think it's going to be a very bad February in terms of points.
Yeah, I mean, he's not coming back in time to rescue us from this horrific run of fixtures. City, United, then we've got Newcastle and Arsenal. So here's something that amused me, Kevin. It was Thomas Frank. I mean, Thomas Frank, we discussed this on our one of our pods previously, that he's got this kind of, his mouth runs away with him. And after matches, you don't want to hear him say, well, do you know what? We were really good. You may not have noticed we were really good, but wow. And, but for this would have happened. And that's really pissing fans off. And he said, now this was in response to a comment made to him about the defenders scoring rather than the forwards. And he said, yeah, we do need to get the forward scoring. He said, the day we add that together, plus defending a tiny bit better, then we will win. And I just thought, well, hang on, we haven't sorted out good defending and good attacking yet. But when we do, fucking hell, we are going to, I don't know what we're going to do. So this is a man who just needs to stop talking for 5 minutes. We can see it. We know what's going on. We're not stupid. Just say, look, yeah, we're trying. We'll hopefully get better next week.
I mean, I think I'm going to be fair now. I think managers, I think it's very difficult because they have a number of audiences they're trying to get a message across to. When he's talking to the camera, he's talking to the players and he's talking to the fans and he's talking to them upstairs. And I think he's not very good at actually giving separate or clear messages, really, to all those groups. I think he does just run away with stuff. It is annoying. I was just thinking, just moving on a little bit to the chants. I think the exchange of chants between Burnley and Spurs fans was funny, and it was one of the great things about football is that kind of thing. But the having a go at Frank, I don't like it. And I'm not criticising people who travel all the way to bloody Burnley. They're entitled to do whatever they want. But there's a personal element which we have talked about, I know, before. The personal element, this having a go at Frank, it's not. I mean, I guess underneath it is the desire to get rid of him and get a decent manager in. But it's not right. And I put myself in his position. I would hate it.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, you mentioned that. I picked a tweet off Twitter today, and it said this: Frank is a terrorist and will be sacked. But can we talk about Trojan horse incompetent Vinay? Get that fucking gooner out of our club. Now, there's lots to unpack there. I don't think it's worth our time, to be honest, Dave. But as Kev says, there is this rather grim, personal kind of element to the attacks on Frank. As I said, I do think Frank needs to shut up a bit or to say what we can see, right? So reflect what we're all seeing. I know he has to spin a story. I know he has to be optimistic, but and also I know it's a very, very it's a fine balance, isn't it? He's on a tightrope, and I think he's just not getting it right at the moment.
He's too articulate, isn't he, really, for his own good? It's that old quote about there'd be many more fish in the sea if they could only learn to keep their mouths shut. And I think he could try and do a bit of this kind of, I think he'd just be better being quiet. The Vinay thing, a bit of an unpleasant thing to, but somebody brought up the spectre of the last time we had installed a gooner was Terry Neal. I saw that on
Wasn't it
Twitter.
George
That was
Graham?
a bit of an unpleasant. Oh, sorry, yeah. That erased that from my memory. That wasn't particularly pleasant, but
Yeah, I mean, there is that kind of forever taint, isn't there? So if you've been at Arsenal in any kind of capacity, who was that little player we had? Roland, what's his name? Roland, oh, God, I've forgotten his name. Julie will remember. Not Roland Rat. He'd
No,
been an Arsenal player.
gone.
We got him,
Erased.
and we thought he was going to be a really good player, and he turned out to be very, very ordinary. But I do think you're up against it as a former Arsenal, academy player coming to Spurs. It's very, very difficult. Whereas I think David Bentley was a Spurs fan, wasn't he? So we forgave him that association. I wanted to ask you about this, Julie. So Romero scored 6 goals. Van der Ven scored 7. They are by some distance leading scorers. Is this a new era for Spurs?
I'm going to plug one of my books now, Double Act, A Modern History of Spurs in 10.5 Striking Partnerships. And they are our new striking partnership. They are our new Son and Kane. Make that what you will. I mean, maybe that's why our defence is so shit, because they're doing 2 jobs, aren't they?
Kev, you alluded to Romero's finish, which was fantastic, and as was his goal against West Ham. These are great finishes, and some other geezer on some other podcast said he's our best centre forward. But when you think about those 2 finishes against Burnley, they were first time, no messing, and I don't feel we have anybody, and I love Solanke for the job that he does, but one of his jobs isn't scoring goals like that. He always seems to want to take a touch.
I mean, I think what they should be, Romero's goals and Van der Ven's goals, is the icing on the cake, shouldn't they? They should be that extra thing that we have that most teams don't have, on top of strikers. And you're right about Solanke. He's not really a goal scorer. It's just that absence, and it's not just the striker. Of course, we're missing a striker. It's also, the creative midfielder, and it's just boring saying that now. But the lack of creativity in midfield and the lack of striker is going to cost us, and it means that we're relying on Romero and Van der Ven's goals rather than them being the icing on the cake.
not only that, but the wingers, and as you said, Kev, the Simmons, but also Tell, Odobert. I mean, they haven't had consistent chances, but they don't look like they're going to score many, do they? And so again, where's it going to come from?
This is not just a problem up front, as Kev said earlier. I think it's the whole setup, isn't it, Dave? There's not. Look, I hesitate to do this, but it is the manager. I feel like the players, and this is only an instinct of mine, that the players are not buying in in much the same way as they stopped buying into Ange. They knew that they were going to get a hiding every week because people had found us out under Ange. And I feel like they're stepping out every week, and unless they get an early goal, and even then, we're still prone to letting a couple in, that they don't believe enough. And that's troubling because they ought to, as we said earlier, they're good enough not to be in this rather dire position.
That's true, yeah. But Julie alluded to it earlier, didn't she, with Romero and Van der Ven kind of appearing to kind of take matters completely into their own hands quite regularly, actually, and not always right at the depth of games where we need to rescue something, but they just seem to, particularly Romero, just looks like, right, I've had enough, and he storms off up the field without any regard for anything. And again, it doesn't seem, you can't imagine that happening at many other clubs, really.
Ali Gold had an interesting piece today, Julie, in which he referred to Romero's increasing influence, both on the field and behind the scenes. And I wonder about this because, they gave him a new contract. They gave him the armband. Makes him kind of invincible. It makes him someone you have to respect, whether you do or you don't. And if he's exerting influence behind the scenes, I don't know what that really means, but is he in any way influencing selection? Is he saying things to other players that are damaging? Is he... I don't know. It's always worrying when you have one personality in a club where as we've noticed before, we don't have a lot of big personalities in that team, where he becomes perhaps a bit Trumpian, a bit too powerful.
It's a really interesting point. It's quite hard to. I mean, he is, I would say, the dominant personality, and I just want to mention that his overhead kick goal, his bicycle kick against Newcastle, because I just like to mention it because it's one of the most fantastic goals I've ever seen. That was Romero absolutely encapsulated. He plays his best and his worst out of rage. And I do think he is a dominant character, whereas I don't think Frank is, which is where the problem lies. I think if he had a manager like Conte, it would be fantastic. He needs that sort of strong personality to contain him and to get the best out of him in every way. I think Ange had a very strong personality, but unfortunately just, didn't know enough about Premier League football. He was found out. And I think that probably by the end, well, wasn't only by the end, I think Maddison also found Ange's lack of a, alternative plan rather
A film of him, wasn't there, on the
difficult.
bench? And he was mouthing something like, why the fuck did he do that? Or, why doesn't
Yes.
he do this? Or something like that. And it was clearly something aimed at Ange's action or inaction.
Yeah, I know. And that was actually quite worrying, but you can see where it ended. I mean, Romero and the other players just took over and won the Europa League. But I think that because of Romero's dominant personality, they're going to listen to him rather than Thomas Frank. Obviously, a very nice bloke, lovely hair. Brentford, he did well with Brentford, but everything was set up for him there. And he had a very good backup staff. Well, Keith Andrews, who's taken over from him, is now doing pretty well, in the main job as Brentford head coach. So, as we've said, I don't think the players have got a lot of confidence, and that comes from not really having a lot of faith in their head coach, as far as I can see. Now, whether Heitinger is going to make any difference, I don't know, but he's a bit of an unknown quality.
Yeah.
I mean, his last thing, he was sacked by, wasn't he, after about 5 months.
Kev, there's kind of there's a Graham Potter feel to this. Potter was the king at Brighton, and everyone coveted him. And he came from an unusual background. He wasn't a particularly good player, and he was this thoughtful, analytical, erudite, clever guy. And then he went to Chelsea, and that was a horrible mess. And then he went to West Ham, bigger mess. And now he's, God knows where he is. And I feel that a little bit about Frank, that it's not so much that he's a bad manager, because bad managers don't keep teams like Brentford in the Premier League. They do pretty well in the Premier League, given, they've got a stadium that holds about 12 people, and they don't have big name players. But he's developed players, Mbuemo and Wissa and others. And so he's not a bad manager. It just seems like he's a bad manager for us. The wrong fit.
Yes. I don't know what the right fit is. That's the thing. Just Conte, Mourinho, I'll just start listing them all, and including Poch for the last year or so. None of them were the right fit. And what is it that we're wanting them to fit with? Some of it's about a not very good squad. And I think Conte in particular was very vocal about that, about what he was having to deal with. I have this little fantasy, like so many people do, that Poch is going to come back. But at the same time, he fitted for a while and then he stopped fitting. There's something, we've said this before as well, there's something wrong, something deep in the soul of the club, or that's got into the soul of the club, I think, that needs exorcising, and I don't know who's capable of doing it, really. It may be that it's down to new owners, but then I'm doing my yes but. I'm yes butting myself here, because God knows who those new owners might be. But something something has to just clear the club out. To just get rid of all the rubbish that's there. And Frank isn't. I don't think Frank is the right fit for us. But I just don't know who
David,
is.
it's something that people talk about a lot, and that is the Spurs way. I wonder about this thing because fuck is the Spurs way. There's this idea that Spurs are all about flair and attacking football and going out and not giving a sod about the other team, just doing what we do, blah blah blah. Like I think there was the idea we bring Ange in. Oh well, listen, mate, we're going to attack. 48 people up front, no one at the back. Let's go for it. And that was, that wasn't actually what the Spurs way is about. For me, the Spurs way, if there's such a thing, seems such a nebulous concept, really. But it's Hoddle for me. It's Ginola. It's Gaza. That's the Spurs way. We have Bale.
Yeah.
We have a brilliant footballer, and we try and do something around that amazing footballer. Right? That's it. That's the Spurs way. If people are talking about the double winning team, that is so long ago. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. What is going? It's about now.
It was about style, maybe more than being absolutely reckless. I don't think we were always absolutely reckless. We maybe lacked a little bit of steel at times. And when we have had steel, Graham Roberts and Paul Miller and people like that, I think we had the best team in the country for a season or two at that point. But yeah, it was about flair. But yeah, it got Ange off the hook, didn't it? That kind of like, I play the Spurs way, or it's the new reinvented Spurs way, which has just become utterly insane and reckless. And on the halfway line, even when we're with 9 men and all the rest of that thing. It's a bit crazy. The one that I keep coming back, I know I've mentioned it on the sort of WhatsApp group, the injuries. Have we got a longer term? I haven't done any numbers, so I've got no numbers for you, but it seems like for a long time we've had a very, very big injury problem. And is there something kind of systematic about the club? And how can it have carried on from Ange, because he had all his guys and girls in, didn't he? And then Frank has brought all of his people in. And yet the injury, being by far the worst club, it's just statistically we are so outlier.
As we were saying last week, that we're top of that league. It's the only league we're top of.
Yeah, and it seems to have been for 2 seasons, at least 2 seasons running. And it's critical players. And like, what are they doing? I mean, is it something wrong with the training ground, or they feeding them wrong or something? It's just surreal. If this was horse racing and you were buying all the best horses every year, and then they're all bloody crocking like every 5 minutes.
Julie, I wanted to raise this with you because you railed when I talked about the 61 double team, but I'm not in any way diminishing that achievement. But I suppose what I'm getting at is that we can't keep talking about that as in any way representing what we're supposed to be, because I don't know what we're supposed to be, but we want attacking football, we want flair. But the truth of the matter is there aren't that many teams that are hugely successful, particularly in the sort of ultra-professional era, playing fantasy football. The exemplars are probably Man City, right? They're able to do that because they bought everyone, right? They bought absolutely everyone, and they could do it. But Arsenal, right, they're grinding their way to the title. And I don't know whether it's even feasible to suggest that you can have a team playing fabulous fantasy football and winning stuff.
Well, no, I mean, those days are over. The 60-61 side, they had 11 very good players. 3 of them were absolutely world-class. I think that almost every player played every single game because, there was no Europe. There was just the FA Cup and the league. It's totally different. What they did have and what we've lacked at certain periods is, the hyper-intelligent player. In that era, Danny Blanchflower. In this era, it's been Harry Kane. They were the sort of motors of our excellence. And the 80-81 side, I would say, although Hoddle was God, the hyper-intelligent player was Steve Perryman. I mean, Perryman didn't have a sparkling international career, but I mean, it was just, the perfect setup. Perryman and Ozzy and Hoddle. And just for, a fleeting season or so, there was greatness because they had two very intelligent strikers as well. As you've said, there was the steel at the back in the form of Roberts and Miller. It didn't really matter that much that Alexic wasn't, was a bit of a mid as a keeper because they had so much else going on for them. But, again, we just don't have that now. The loss of Kane, I thought when he first left Bayern, we were going to be all right. And for 11 games, I thought, we can survive this. But, it's only the last year and a half. I think that we've begun to realise just what we've lost. And I think that's exacerbated by the loss of Son as well. And which is sort of brings us back to the only two world-class players we've got in Romero and Van de Ven are between them having to save the club.
You raised that 81 team, which I loved. I mean, that's such a great team. We were able to accommodate Kev, Ardiles, Villa and Hoddle in that team. And we had these two flair players up front, Crooks and Archibald. And we were somehow, Keith Bergenshaw created something. There was a kind of a magic and alchemy about that it just worked. I wonder whether a setup would have any chance in today's, you'd have Rice clustering into them and you'd have, the Arsenal midfield just shutting them down, suffocating them. I don't know whether it would be as effective now.
Can you imagine just one of them at their prime coming into the current side? They would make a difference, a big difference. They would, we wouldn't suddenly win the league, but we would, potentially that would be enough. Just one of them at their best to take us up into the, potentially Champions League places, I think. And we don't, and I'm, as I say that, I'm sitting here thinking, well, maybe we're going to get that person. Maybe that person's going to come before the end of the window. I don't know who the equivalent is. Just listening to those players, the names of those players, there's something so magical. And those players were a big part of why I'm still watching the bloody club and still feel part of the club because of that team, particularly, and going to Wembley and just being proud of those players. We didn't win the league, but it didn't matter at all because of that special nature of how we played.
I sort of sometimes chastise myself for not enjoying it more, for not thinking, Christ, I'm watching Hoddle every week. What a privilege that is. Because, and I think, you try and tell, fans who didn't ever see the guy play how great he was. And it's hard to convey it because you're watching it, an absolute genius, everything. And you say, bringing him to the midfield, he used to play at one point with Chris Jones up front and Jerry Armstrong. And he could occasionally make even that lot look like actual footballers, which is, so, I'm sure you could imagine him with Solanke actually linking up and doing something special, but I don't think that player exists. Dave, we've talked about the lack of incomings. We've brought in a kind of a quotidian, he's more than that. That's not fair. Gallagher's a good footballer. He's busy. He'll get stuck in, and I think he's better technically than people give him credit for. But he's not the guy who's going to transform us. And it looks like Simmons hasn't been able to do it yet. There are signs. Who is that player? And what are the chances of him coming to a shithouse like Spurs?
Obviously, Andy Robertson thing's fallen through. But if you look at the people that one seemed genuine rather than, Gary from Harlow. Andy Robertson seemed to be, and to some degree, I think with Gallagher, it was bringing in the game management kind of thing. I think a bit of the kind of like know-how and the nitty-gritty that we're kind of missing a bit that they're looking for. And I can see, it's obvious why we need it, but they're not going to Obviously, the Hoddle player doesn't exist, as you said, but I don't think we're really looking for them either. And realistically, yeah, as you say, would they come to Spurs? Probably not. So I think they're going to bring in some Hod carriers, aren't they, rather than a Hoddle.
Let's move on, shall we, to the next match. So we've got we always beat this lot, City. They are, well, we beat them away. They are not the team that they were, and, they were well beaten by Man U the other day. They beat Wolves. Was it convincing? I don't know. I didn't see the game. But they're not the team, not that team anymore. But I do get concerned, Julie, when we have on social media, these are supposed to be our fans saying, I hope we lose this one because we don't want to do Arsenal any favours. All right, before I have a rant about that, where do you stand on that?
When I see this on social media, I just think, where's your self-respect? If that's the best that you can get out of, being a Spurs supporter, there's something very wrong. I mean, I don't think we've got a cat and hell chance of beating City. They're only 4 points behind the Arse now. They're just about doing what they usually do in January. The engine's just started up now and we'll just be trampled. But I suppose it's just, I don't want to take pleasure in Arsenal being beaten by a late Man United goal. And I really chastise myself for, jumping up out of my seat and clapping my hands on my own in the living room even. I mean, how pathetic can you get? I need a reason for looking forward to Spurs games again, not sort of just hoping for Arsenal's downfall. But I would never, ever, ever hope that we lose to City.
I mean, actually, Kev, watching that match, the Arsenal-United game, I don't care who wins that game, but I do care about watching a good game. That was a great game of football. It was exciting. Two teams going for it, two teams playing football. And it just made me think, Christ, we are fucking miles away from competing at this sort of level.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not totally sure I agree with you because I think there was that usual nasty.
Kev, you know you're not supposed to disagree with me, right? You do know that. I'm the host.
I think United played some good football and there were a couple of wonderful goals there. Arsenal didn't score a couple of wonderful goals. They scored typical Arsenal goals, really. I agree totally with everything Julie said, including the fact that I celebrated that Man United third goal. It was one of the most exciting things that's happened watching football for a long time, really, because there's so little of excitement watching us. And if we lose, I will be less upset than I would if we lost to any other team against City.
Yeah.
But I want us to win.
Dave, you are on our WhatsApp group. Your silver lining when Spurs lose is always, well, at least Arsenal aren't winning, or at least Arsenal this or Arsenal that. So you're the arch Arsenal hater, and that's fine. I don't hate Arsenal because I haven't got time I haven't got the space in my head to hate Arsenal because I've just got too much going on with my fucking horrible, useless team, and that's been the case for 56 years. So that's all I've got time for, all I care about. So I want us to win every game. I don't care if Arsenal win the league. That's because they were the best team over 38 matches. What's it got to do with us? Their ground's near our ground. Big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I was at school in North London, and there were slightly more Arsenal fans than Spurs fans among my classmates, and I always absolutely hated them. But that all being said, absolutely 1,000% with Kev and Julie that always want Spurs to win no matter what. It's a completely secondary thing. Obviously, I would like something absolutely hideous to befall them every single week. Yeah. That's a bonus if that happens.
There's a carryover from this as well, Julie, which is that we see some of our fans saying, I hope we lose this week, and then they'll get rid of Frank. What? It's senseless. It's senseless. And frankly, we're in far too much trouble to be wishing, another 3 points down the drain just to achieve this objective.
Well, it is, yeah. And it's just social media, isn't it? It's stroke Twitter, where people are looking for engagement, and some of them are about 12 years old. It's got to the extent now where I don't really go on X stroke Twitter very much at all, because it's so pathetic, and I don't think that is what in the real world Spurs fans are really like. I mean, you three are Spurs fans. You seem relatively sane. I mean, I'm not going to go overboard, but I would think you're more typical of average Spurs fans.
Look, it's a good place to finish today. I think we've aired some grievances, and we've covered. If only Spurs hierarchy would listen to us, right? They might start getting things right. Look, I tell you what. Last thing, briefly, your predictions then for City, and Kev, we'll talk about this more on the mini pod on Friday. But what's your prediction?
We're going to lose, and I'm going to be
Okay.
disappointed, but not that disappointed. I think 3-1.
Very, very
to
clear,
City.
very crisp. Julie?
I don't think we're going to score. I think it'll be probably 3 or 4-0 to them, and I shall be stoical.
And of course, just worth mentioning that we're playing
It
Eintracht
is.
Frankfurt tomorrow night. There was not much point talking about that, because who cares? I mean, we're going to qualify one way or the other. We're going to get another round of matches in the Champions League, so that's good. Maybe we'll get Barcelona. Maybe we'll get Real Madrid and really take a proper hammering, and then maybe they'll get rid of Frank. Hey, that'll be good. Look, that's it. My thanks to Julie Welch, to Dave Bradshaw and Kevin Acott. We will be back on Friday, Kevin and I, with the mini pod, and then we'll all be back next Monday with more stuff. Thanks for joining us today. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at Nice One Cyril Pod. We are on all the major podcast platforms. We've just gone on to Amazon Music as well, so you can find us everywhere you look. Subscribe, follow, all that malarkey, and you'll never miss an episode. Thanks again. Come on, you Spurs.
Nice one, Cyril.